Hello, my name is Eric Sieben, and I am one of the pastors at the Village Church. The following podcast is a ministry of the Village Church. We hope that it inspires you, that it draws you closer to Jesus, and it opens your eyes to the possibilities of living in the kingdom. Enjoy, and God bless. They love you, Daniel.
Hello. Thanks, Eric.
Don't forget any of your jokes, okay?
Oh, I know. Wow, thank you. Good evening, guys and gals. Let me get my notes out, get the Bible ready. I'm very excited to talk about our Neo-Monastic Life on Mission, and somehow we've gone to the next slide. Particularly, we're going to be talking about meals together, but let's start with prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time to speak on your word, and I just pray that you would fill my words with things pleasing to you, and the meditations of our hearts and minds would be pleasing to you as well. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Neo-Monastic Life on Mission. Before I can talk about food, let's talk about the Neo-Monastic Life on Mission. This is a sermon series that we're in. We have a lot of sermons that are talking about this thing in particular. We even have stickers, so if you're interested in getting a sticker, they're really cool. And so, yeah, you can put them on whatever. I put mine on my phone case. It's really cool. I'm really excited about the Neo-Monastic Life on Mission. Now, if you're new with us or you just need reminding, it's worth reminding, what is the Neo-Monastic Life on Mission? Well, monastic in particular is an ancient tradition of monasticism. This is where we get our monasteries, our monks, nuns. They would, and it was a practice of secluding oneself from society and then devoting yourself to God and committing yourself to a life of communal living and spiritual disciplines. That was the gist of what the monastic life was. But we have neo-monastic, and neo means new. So what is this new monastic tradition? Well, what neo adds, really what it removes, is that first part, which is secluding oneself. The neo-monastic tradition is taking that devotion to God, the commitment to living communally and practicing spiritual disciplines, and bringing it back into society. You bring the monasteries from the country and bring it back into the city. And this was what the neo-monastic is all about. And so our neo-monastic life on mission is living out this neo-monastic life, or at least a version of it at the village, and connecting back to the mission, because the mission of the neo-monastic life is to display a countercultural way of life and invite people to enter into it, particularly following Jesus. And so I just want us to hold on to that, because I'm going to go off on a few tangents, but we should hold on to this neo-monastic life on mission as we consider the future things. The village has really taken hold of a few practices, because part of the neo-monastic life, as I said, is those spiritual practices or spiritual disciplines, and these are things that we continue to work on together. And so one of our practices that is very prevalent is eating meals together. We have a lot of different meals together. You can likely all smell the cornbread that is being baked right now. One of our ways that we do this is Sunday lunch and dinner. It's the most consistent way that we practice meals together. And it's really awesome. We get to share a meal after our more formal service, if you could call this formal, and enjoy a meal together. This is really beautiful. Our biggest event is the soup supper. This is really awesome, and we all come together and we bring our different soups, the ones we love. We try new soups, and we also bring breads and desserts, and I'm always torn deciding what to try because there's so many different things. I think my record is somewhere around 12 trying soups, but I don't care to beat it, because then you don't get to try the breads and you don't get to try the desserts. And so anyway, it's really awesome. You should come to the soup supper. It's coming up on November 22nd. The other one is our gratitude service. So this one, the focus is on gratitude, but we always share a meal together. And this is where we remember God's provision miraculously for our building. It's really beautiful. We share a meal. There's usually nachos made by Eric often, and they're really awesome. It's great to share food and remember. Another one is our men's and women's gatherings. As you just heard, there's going to be 3 soups. That's awesome. I didn't know. I thought it was going to be a light meal. That doesn't sound very light to me. But we have our men's and women's gatherings. This is outside of Sunday services, so this is an extra event where we also share a meal together. The men's gathering, original name was Burgers, Brats, and Bros. You can see where our focus is, but it was over a meal. Also, we have youth group now. This is something that I'm hosting every other week, and we share a meal to start it off. So outside of these official events that the village hosts, we also just share meals in each other's homes. If you've been at the village for any length of time, it's likely that someone's invited you into their home to share a meal. This is an awesome practice. I mean, a church that really values eating together. No wonder I stuck around, because I love food. Let me make you hungry, or hungrier, for a little bit. So, I really love food. This was highlighted to me in high school when I started to notice that people, my friends, people around me would say things like, "I forgot to eat." It just didn't compute. That was my response, was silence. I was like, how do you forget to eat? Especially in high school as a teenager, I was always looking forward to the next meal. I was thinking often in class, is it socially acceptable to eat at 10:30 in between my classes? I did it a few times. Anyway, I loved food. This was also named in my life, quite literally, when I went to Nepal. I went to Nepal on a short-term mission trip, and in late high school. And very quickly, the local cook named me Hungry Boy. It's very true. It was very true to who I was. I was always complaining about being hungry. I was going back for seconds, for thirds. It was great. I don't know. I love food. I was Hungry Boy. Now, yes, this is partially just an individual experience. This is just me. But also, I am a product of our culture. And our culture, the American culture, is obsessed with food. We display this obsession in lots of different ways. For me, it was eating a lot and really enjoying food. However, I think at the root of all of this is this little thing here. If I eat the right foods, if I eat the right quantities, and I eat at the right times, I will feel the right way. As I said, this comes out in lots of different ways. For me, it was eating a lot of food, particularly extra tasty, satiating foods. All those things, the fast food that we all know is not really good for us, but we eat it anyway. We also hyper-focus on eating the right foods to fuel our bodies perfectly. We want to get just the right vitamins and all the right energy levels so that we can kayak when we're 95 or whatever. And not all of us do this, but it shows itself in lots of different ways. And I wanted to include this picture from the morning service. This is Kate and Isaac worked together to make this picture on food, because I think it shows a little bit. I'm going to stretch it a little bit. But it shows that most of us are kind of in the middle, where we're like, yeah, we really value those good foods that make us feel good and fuel our body. But also sometimes we eat hot dogs and bacon, and it's delicious. Or when Taco Bell comes out with its new whatever, we're like, oh, that's going to cure my stress for like 5 minutes. Here's the thing. These phrases, there's truth in these phrases. This is the narrative we play, and the best lies are twisted truths. And so, yes, it's true that if you eat foods, they will affect how you feel. When you eat certain amounts of foods, they will also affect how you feel. And when you eat at certain times, it will also do this. I mean, intermittent fasting is awesome, and I've tried it, and it's great. It does change the way you feel, but where we go wrong is we say, we will feel the right way. The food becomes the solution rather than a supporting piece of our holistic being. And so, we are not apprentices of our culture. We are apprentices of Jesus. And so, when we look at this, we can say this, yes, food affects our body. We were made to eat food. We were made physical beings. However, that is not all there is. Now, a side note, this is a bit of a joke, but if you want to fix your life and feel the right way, you just have to have meals together. I'm only half joking here because when you look at the data, this is kind of what it says, is that if you just eat meals together, then you'll be happier, you'll be more content, your kids won't go to prison, and they'll be successful, they'll win Nobel Prizes. Okay, that last one was an exaggeration, but that's how it feels when you look at the data. It's incredible. I mean, all of these things. What it says is those who consistently eat meals together are more likely to have all these different things. Now, I'm a stickler for statistics. When I first got married to my wife, Catherine, I didn't realize how much I did this, but she really loved psychology podcasts, and she'd tell me all about these studies, and then I would just poke at them as much as I could. I'd be like, yeah, but like, is that just one study, or have they reproduced it? Or I'd be like, oh, but that's a correlation study, so I don't really care. So, when I looked at these studies, I noticed they're correlation studies. Before we throw them out, I think they're important. Because even if it's not the meal together itself, you can ask yourself, why not? If you're not having meals together, you can ask yourself, why am I not having meals together on a consistent basis? And that why not might be hindering you from feeling the right way. And there's the transition that I forgot, so let's go back to the notes. Right. This is a practice, not a formula. Eating meals together is a practice, not a formula. So, when we jump into meals together, it's not like everyone's going to share a meal in the same way. They're not going to host the same way. They're not going to enter into a meal the same way. It's a practice, not a formula. We'll do it differently at each of our events. It's different when you walk into a home versus when you have a meal at our church. It's a practice. And so, as we practice this together, let's look at Jesus and some of the stories that he has. And a quick note before we enter into these, I have 3 stories from Jesus, and I worked probably harder than I should to make these breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it didn't actually work, and so we're going to have to do some artistic liberties when we read these. The last one is definitely breakfast, but yeah, bear with me. But these stories are all over the Bible. They just don't really say lunch very often for some reason. Anyway, let's go into the home of Mary and Martha. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." This story has been told over and over again. And what I want to highlight, first, here's a depiction of this story. I chose this story because it highlights what Martha is so worried about. It's all that preparation right out there in the front. Hosting is work. That is the reality. When you bring someone into your home and serve them a meal, it takes work. This is true. And I don't think Jesus would refute that. And I don't think he's refuting that in this story. What I think Jesus is doing is saying, remember the reason for the meal. He's pointing out the purpose of hosting. Why did Martha bring Jesus into her home to spend time with Jesus? The purpose of hosting someone into your house is to spend time with the person you've invited. And so if you are so distracted by all of your preparations that you actually can't be present to the person you've invited, I think you've missed the point. We don't all do this, but maybe what I have run into, and what maybe you do as well, is maybe we make a really awesome meal, and it's fantastic, but it was so much work, we're like, ooh, that was great. I'm never doing that again. Watch out for that, because that keeps you from hosting people. That keeps you from sharing meals together. So, make hosting accessible. Now, someone in the morning service pointed out that, hey, maybe it's not necessarily hosting that's the problem, but when Jesus is pointing this out, he's saying this because Martha is spewing contempt onto Mary. And so, I agree. I think that's true. I think what that shows is that Martha has some sort of idol or vow around hosting. And so we should pay attention to that. Make hosting accessible. I don't want to discourage hosting. Or at least doing the work of hosting, because it is work, and it's beautiful to prepare a space. When you clean your space, you make it inviting. When you prepare a yummy meal, it's something that the people can really enjoy with you. It's really awesome to put in the work of hosting. But maybe we can spend a little bit of time considering the person before we do the preparations. Because maybe what would serve them more is spending time praying for that person before they showed up, instead of doing, that awesome homemade guac that's really good. The meal might be good without the guac. This is a practice that I've been trying to do with Catherine. When we have people over, and she's helped me a little bit with this, which is to pray for people before we host them. And we've, in our life stage, had to habit stack it. So when we're preparing, while we're doing these preparations, we start praying for the person. And I get really distracted even when it's just mashing avocados. And so I need to pull out of that and just pray separately. But maybe that's because I haven't practiced it very well. So, let's make hosting more accessible. The next story that we have is from Luke chapter 14. The last story was also Luke chapter 10. And this one's a bit longer, so bear with me as I read it. But I'm going to have a little bit less to say about this one because I think the story speaks for itself. So, Luke chapter 14. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. There in front of him was a man suffering from dropsy. Jesus asked the Pharisees and the experts of the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him away. And he asked them, "If one of you has a son or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull him out?" And they had nothing to say. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come to you and say, "Give this man your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, 'Friend, move up to this better place.' Then you will be honored in the presence of all your fellow guests. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and those who humble himself will be exalted." Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors. If you do, they might invite you back, so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and then you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." I'm going to pause here. Jesus continues to add another parable, but when I was reading this, there's a lot baked in here. However, what jumped out to me was check your motivations. Check your motivations for having meals. Are you there to serve the other person, or are you there to serve yourself? And that seemed to be what stood out to me. I would love to hear your thoughts in the response time, which there should be plenty. But next parable, verse 15. When one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is the man who will eat at the feast of the kingdom of God." Jesus replied, "A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests." I'm going to pause and pull out of here. I'm going to pause a few times because this one's really good. But this is classic Jesus, where someone makes a statement and then he's like, "Let me tell you a story." So yeah, let's jump into this story. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, "I have just bought a field, and I must go see it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me." Still another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." There's no excuse me for that one. Just thought I'd say that. The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, "Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." "Sir," the servant said, "what you ordered has been done, but there is still room." Then the master told his servant, "Go out to the roads and the country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those men who were invited will get a taste of my banquet." I think this parable, he repeats his previous point, but at a different angle. Check your motivations for meals. This one in particular is when you're going to a meal. Maybe you need to check your motivations in your normal life. This is where that question, why not, comes back in as well. If you're not able to go to a meal that someone else has prepared for you, why not? Because, and yeah, here's that, yeah, so, sorry, for some reason, this one's not working for me. But, checking your motivations. Oh, I know why, because I was really supposed to tell this joke from earlier. Thank you, Eric. That's why my brain wouldn't let me move on. Okay, so here is this little tidbit. This does not really have to do with this sermon, but I thought it was too hilarious to leave out. So when I invited my friend Philip to come to a board game with me, one time, this was months ago, he was like, "Oh man, I would really love to come, but I just bought 5 yoke of oxen, so I can't join." And that would be funny in itself. However, I was like, Philip's kind of crazy, and he is always talking about land in Cochise County. So I'm pretty sure he just bought a field and got some oxen. I don't think I want to go play my board game. I want to go to this field. I'm not exaggerating. This is what I thought. So I called Philip, and I was like, "Hey, man, did you just buy a field?" And he was like, "No, it was a joke." I didn't get the joke till I was preparing this sermon 3 months later. Oh my goodness. Anyway, amazing. It was fantastic. We'll have responses at the end. Thank you for your question. Yeah, but check your motivations. So, are we there to serve ourselves, or are we there to serve others? Next. All right. So you might be thinking, this is great. Sounds awesome and righteous to go serve others all the time, but, I can't always give. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. So dead in the morning. It was such a bad joke, and it was still in the slide, so I had to keep it. It's true. You can't always give. This is actually very true. If you're always serving out of your own strength, you're going to get burnt out and you're going to give up. So before we get burnt out and we give up, let's have a meal to fill us up. Brekkie with Jesus. So, this one comes from John chapter 21. I'm going to read it, and then we'll talk about it. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat. But that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul in the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far off, about 100 yards. When they had landed, they saw a fire of burning coals, with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have caught." Simon Peter climbed aboard and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come, have breakfast." None of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. There's a lot of interesting little tidbits in this story, and it's going to continue on. I'm going to read the next little portion in a second. But what I want to highlight here is, first they were fishing all night and caught nothing. And then, after listening to Jesus, they didn't know what to do with all the fish that they had caught. And then they come to shore, and it's ambiguous whether or not they have to eat that fish. It seems like they come to shore and Jesus already has fish for them. So all that work they did to drag that fish ashore, count 153 fish in front of Jesus, he already has some fish. Or maybe they grilled up some of the fish while they were counting. But regardless, Jesus provided the fish. And so as we enter into meals together, sometimes we need to go to Jesus and listen, because he might have us go serve a different person than we're serving. Maybe we're fishing all night and catching nothing. Let's read on. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The 3rd time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him a 3rd time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." I'm going to stop there. I was going to do this really cool nerdy thing where I took these 3 things, feed my sheep, or in other translations, most other, it says tend my lambs and then tend my sheep, and it really says feed. But then I got this Bible and it just says feed, so there you go. We're talking about food, feed my fish. Now, you might be thinking, we're supposed to have this meal that fills us up. And so far, you've still just talked about serving. And here's the thing. Serving fills us up. Serving is actually one of the things that fills us up. Sometimes we need a mentor, and that's really good. Sometimes we have to find someone who can help us learn how to serve, or see how someone else serves to then go out and serve. And Peter and the apostles do just this. They're out fishing, and then Jesus comes to them as a mentor and has a meal with them. That's still really good. It's good to have meals with your mentors. Maybe you need to pay attention to someone who's around you and say, wow, I really like the way they do hospitality. And then pay attention to how they do it instead of just, that's really cool that they do that, and I could never. Pay attention to how they do hospitality, or ask them to mentor you. What happens after this moment, not too long after, we see Peter and the apostles at Pentecost. And they are filled with the Holy Spirit and then go out and serve. They go out and spread the word, the good news of Jesus. And here I want to end my scripture reading with this passage that you heard earlier. We read the whole thing for the context, but this is what I want to focus on. So then, those who had received his word were baptized, and that day there were added about 3,000 souls. They were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayer. I want to pause here and talk about fellowship to the breaking of bread and prayer. Well, really fellowship and the breaking of bread, because that is meals together. They were devoted to... Heyo, there's a green light. Thank you, Peter. And we're back. Hey, I can actually hear. Okay, that's cool. So, devoting themselves to fellowship and the breaking of bread. Now, many of you might be thinking, okay, but breaking of bread is communion. Yes, most likely breaking of bread is communion. But what I would say is that with an equal sense of confidence, we can say that the breaking of bread, communion, was not yet separated from a meal. In the early church, it seems pretty clear that it was taken during a meal. This was a practice that they paired with a meal because that's how they were shown to do it. And so when they were devoting themselves to the fellowship and the breaking of bread, seems like they're talking about eating together. And if you're still not convinced, well, let's keep reading. Everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and many wonders and signs were taking place through the apostles. And all the believers were together and had all things in common. They would sell their property and possessions and share them with all to the extent that anyone had need. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. So even if that breaking of bread was not shared over a meal, it's still day by day, going from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness, sincerity of heart, and praising God. And then that last part, and having favor with all the people. I want to point that out because when we have meals together, and we're sincere when we have those meals, and we share them with gladness while praising God, then it's appealing. People see that and are drawn in, and that connects us back to our Neo-Monastic Life on mission. We are inviting people to a countercultural way of life, not to focus on the food, but to focus on the people while we're sharing meals together. So, as we practice this, I have a few things that you can ponder practicing meals. 1, enter meals together with an others-focused mindset. Now, a lot of us might have some consistent meals that we take together. I mean, you come to the village, so you're going to share a meal right now. But we can enter into these with a others-focused mindset. This is a practice that we can do. It's something we talk a lot about at the village, and it's really good. It's worth repeating. Create systems that make hosting less burdensome. And I realized pretty quickly that my own personality is bleeding into this because I really love systems. So maybe you can take create systems out and then just say make hosting less burdensome. Because maybe it's not that you need to make a system, maybe you just need to make a heart change. You need to change your expectations for what a meal looks like, whether it's making it less elaborate, or maybe it's making it a little more inviting than you had previously done. Pray for the people you invite over. This is really good. You can do this while you're preparing to have them over, or you can pray for the people if you're going to that meal, because they're likely preparing while you're doing that. So pray for the different people. This is one of the practices we should be doing. Make time to ask God who you are called to serve. Because sometimes we're out there fishing all night and we're like, why is this just not working? And we might just need to stop and listen to Jesus and then see where he's leading us. And this can be done individually, but I would say it's most often done in community. And so talk to your people, pray together about who you are called to serve. The last one, if you're not currently having a consistent rhythm of sharing a meal, make one. Create a consistent rhythm. And it might have to be really accessible, like, going to Taco Bell. That's great. Create a consistent rhythm of sharing a meal. I have a few minutes for responses. Questions. We had one right off the bat over here. 5 yokes of oxen.
Yeah, what is that?
Oh, so yeah, that is 5 pairs of oxes, and they would use them to till the fields and do mass gardening. What is an ox? It's like a cow, yeah. Yep. Yeah, thanks for the question. That's great. Any other thoughts, pushbacks?
I liked how you talked about entering meals with an others-focused mindset, and also, it's funny you mentioned the correlational study. As someone who studies causal inference for a living, that was a funny sentence. But also, it's important to think about, even if you're looking at a correlational study, what other things will be different with people who eat meals versus people who don't. So I like that you talk about focusing on others, because if you're eating a meal, the point isn't probably the food. The point is probably asking others, how was your day? What are you doing? What can I be praying about? Those kind of things. So even the correlational study probably makes your point even stronger, that the people who are eating together are probably very different from people who are not. So essentially, it is probably not a causal effect of eating together per se, but the effect is probably if we eat together, we are doing other things that are just good for how we should be living as Christ followers anyway. So I just really liked that you mentioned that. That was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, I totally agree. I think if you start a practice of eating meals together, those other things might fall into place. Yeah, I think that's what you're saying. Thanks for reiterating. Yeah.
So when I grew up, my mom had this thing when people would come over, she'd make us panic clean, or she would panic and make us clean. And so when I first got married, whenever when we were coming to the village and we'd invite people over, I'd be like, panic cleaning. And then I had these friends and they would invite us over kind of a lot, and they just didn't really care about cleaning. No, I mean, they cared, they did, but it wasn't a huge priority. They were fine to invite us over in the mess. And it was at first a little shocking, but then it was really refreshing. And I was like, they just don't care. And they're still cool. And it's really maybe not that big of a deal. And so then it helped me to relax. So when you said something about making hosting less burdensome, that is something I learned probably almost 17 years ago. And was a huge thing for me, to just not care if my house is perfect, not care if things are really that clean at all, because I'm still a cool person and you can still come for dinner.
Thanks, Danielle. That's really good.
Yeah, that's one of the things growing up in the Seneca house, where it was like, okay, things don't need to be perfect. And I feel like I've internalized that maybe too much. But yeah, it's kind of like foreign to me when someone's like, no, I can't have you over, my house is a mess. I'm like, well, I could sit on your couch and you could clean and I could keep you company. Like, like if you want. I don't know. Also, I really like that you said create systems that make hosting less burdensome. I usually say create habits or routines that make things less burdensome, because that's the way my brain works. But it's helpful when you can have like, oh, this is something that I always do this way, and so it's not difficult to like, do the thing. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we host that youth group every other week, and so we've had to really work on this, because my story leads me to not care as much for cleaning. But I've been very convinced by Catherine that sometimes it makes your space more inviting when you care a little bit. And so that is really important. But, when we make food for all those lovely teenagers who we really enjoy, it's just rice, beans, and chicken. And we have 3 Instapots now. And so we just 3 Instapot, rice, beans, chicken, and we're good. And sometimes we have guac, It's great.
Daniel, thank you for this sermon. I really appreciate it. A couple things that it made me think about. One, the question of like, what's my field? I don't know if you actually asked that question, but you did when we worked on it. And about trying to think through like what things are keeping me, the why not. And that really kind of struck me as to like, what fields am I tending to that maybe I shouldn't be tending to that have entered in my life, the oxen, that are keeping me away from people and sitting with them. And the other one that was really hit me and I have been processing is just this idea of really bringing people to God before they come over. I'm used to praying for people a lot, but not necessarily as I'm thinking about them coming over for dinner, and really kind of processing what Jesus wants to do in their life at the dinner table with me and the people eating. And then the other thing is just to share like the way I think God works in kind of the hosting not being perfect. We have this rogue mouse in our house, and we've tried every single trap, and I'm pretty sure, or most traps, and I'm pretty sure it's the same mouse because I've seen him, and he's got a particular marking, and he likes to come out when we have people over for dinner and run across the kitchen. And it's just so disruptive to my soul to feel like I'm having people over and there's this rogue mouse. And he really makes me upset. But it does actually also help me kind of settle into what's the point in all of this. And the point is I live next to a wash, so the war with the mouse. No, that's not the point. The point is that Jesus really is inviting me to settle into caring for the people in front of me. So thank you for the sermon. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's fun to hear so many thoughts.
One more question.
Yeah.
How do you pray for people if you're having a party and you don't know who's coming?
That is a great question. I mean, you usually know who you've invited. And so you can pray for the invite list. You can also pray and say, hey, would you help the space be really good for the people who are here? And those who can't make it, you can pray for them too. Yeah. We had John, and then we're going to have to wrap up. Now I have to know.
Hey, In my family practice over many years, it was very surprising how many families were not having meals together. So one of the assignments was to have a meal together, just a couple of meals together, and that became that was hard. And, no noise, no television, that kind of thing. And I can't put together a correlative study, but it appeared to make some difference, especially in connectivity with children, mom, dad, that kind of thing. It did make a difference from my vantage point. It's more of a soft study, if you will. So I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting about sharing a meal together, especially as you said, when there's not a TV on or you don't have your phones out or whatever, is you have to actually talk to each other. And so if you don't actually enjoy the other person or something's been rubbing you the wrong way for a long time, that might come out during the meal. And I've experienced those meals, and they can be really weird and awkward, but they're really good and important because that's how you live together. That's how you start to enjoy each other's company, is to hash out those hard moments. But a lot of times meals are just great, and they are really fun, so go have them.